Hello, my dear Nightfall Wanderers, and welcome back to Mr. Sandman. I've missed having you here, where together we slip into the shadows of the darkest dreams and most chilling tales. I often wonder just how much fear your hearts can handle, how many sleepless nights you'll endure for one more taste of terror. Tonight, I have something special, a tale that will make you question what's real and what's just a nightmare. Settle in, my wanderers, and let the darkness take you. The hollow eyes of Grayridge Farm. The Blackwood family had lived on Grayridge Farm for generations. Thick woods encircled their land, towering trees casting shadows even in daylight, while a fog often rolled in at dusk, giving everything a cold gray hue. What started as a quiet, isolated homestead gradually became a nightmare, haunted by something that lurked just beyond the tree line. One fall evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the first sign of the creature came. Jessica, the youngest daughter, spotted a figure lingering at the edge of the trees, half hidden by the branches. It stood impossibly tall and thin, its skin as pale as bone, with a twisted neck and shoulders that jutted out unnaturally. Its head tilted sideways as if broken, a tattered cloak hanging from its skeletal frame. "Pa," she whispered, grabbing her father's sleeve as they stood on the porch. "Do you see it?" Her father squinted into the gloom, but by then the figure had faded back into the trees, leaving only the faint sound of rustling branches. He brushed it off, saying it was probably a trick of the light, but Jessica knew what she had seen, and she wasn't the only one. Over the next few nights, strange things began happening. The cows in the barn would moan in terror, their wide, glassy eyes fixated on the woods as though they sensed the creature even before it appeared. At dawn, the Blackwoods would find the animal scratched and bleeding, as if they'd clawed at the barn walls in a desperate attempt to escape. One night, as a thunderstorm brewed overhead, the family heard a scraping noise at the window. Thomas, the eldest son, moved toward it, cautious, yet drawn to the sound. His hand shook as he pulled back the curtain, and there, inches from his face, were two hollow, glowing eyes. The creature's face was a gaunt, hollow mask, with taut, rotting skin stretched over a skull-like frame. Its mouth twisted into a sickening grin, rows of blackened, broken teeth glinting in the dim light. A bone-thin hand reached up, clawed fingers scraping down the window's glass. It looked human, but the fingers were too long, twisted at unnatural angles with yellowing nails that seemed to grow and retract as it watched him. The family was paralyzed with fear, unable to look away as the creature's face contorted. Its jaw unhinged wider, impossibly wide, until its face was a hollow void, black and endless. Then it began to whisper in a low, guttural voice, a language that twisted the air around it, each word seeping through the glass like venom. The next day, the family tried to leave, but every attempt to drive off the property failed. The car refused to start, its engine choked out by an unseen force. When they tried walking down the road, they found themselves right back at the farm, no matter which direction they took. It was as though the land itself had trapped them, and the creature was always watching, waiting. By the third night, exhaustion and terror weighed on them like stones. They locked every door and window, yet they could hear the creature pacing outside, whispering their names in a mocking sing-song tone. Finally, it spoke to their father. "Your blood," it whispered through the keyhole, "belongs to me." Desperate, Mr. Blackwood took his hunting rifle and aimed it at the front door, but the creature was faster, somehow slipping into the shadows and then appearing behind him. It gripped him with one hand, twisting his head to the side, its long, razor-sharp teeth sinking into his shoulder. Blood splattered across the floor as he screamed, his eyes wide with terror. The family could only watch as the creature drained him, its face twisted into a grotesque mask of hunger. When it finished, it let his lifeless body crumple to the ground, then slowly turned toward the rest of them, its hollow eyes now burning with a sick red glow. The Blackwoods had no choice but to retreat to the attic, locking themselves in and praying that daylight would come. But as the first rays of dawn crept through the tiny attic window, the creature's twisted face appeared again, pressing up against the glass. This time, it whispered a single word, a promise that chilled them to the bone. Forever. Are you still with me, my nightfall wanderers? Did that last story send shivers down your spine? Or are you brave enough for more? Don't get too comfortable. The next tale promises even darker shadows. Remember, the night is only getting deeper, and sleep is a long way off. Ready? Then let's continue. The next story we will be reading is The Dark Chambers of Hollow Manor. Tyler sighed as he stared down at his phone, the message from Mia lighting up his screen. For weeks she had begged him to go to the infamous Hollow Manor haunted house with her, a place rumored to be a step beyond terrifying. It wasn't just any haunted house, it was known for pushing its visitors to the brink of sanity. But Tyler wasn't the biggest fan of horror. Still, Mia's excitement was contagious, and there was something about her wide, pleading eyes that made it impossible to say no. Fine, he said that night at dinner. Let's go to Hollow Manor. But if you get scared, don't say I didn't warn you. Mia's face lit up with a mischievous smile. I think it's you who'll be scared, but we'll see. The next day, they booked tickets online. The confirmation page had an ominous note at the bottom. Enter at your own risk. No refunds. Tyler felt a chill run down his spine as he read it, but he brushed it off. It was just a gimmick to add to the haunted house's appeal, he told himself. He glanced over at Mia, who was practically bouncing with excitement. If she wasn't afraid, he'd make sure he wasn't either. A few nights later, as twilight settled over the town, they drove through winding country roads, finally arriving at Hollow Manor. The mansion loomed above them, shadowed and decayed, with ivy crawling up its crumbling stone walls. The windows were dark, but a faint red glow flickered from the second floor. No sound came from within, just an eerie silence. They approached the entrance, where a thin, pale man in an old-fashioned suit greeted them, his face set in a too-wide grin. Welcome to Hollow Manor, he intoned, his voice a low rasp. Once you enter, there's no turning back. Do you accept? Tyler swallowed, but Mia squeezed his hand reassuringly. We're ready, she said, excitement sparkling in her eyes. The man's grin grew wider, revealing teeth that looked too sharp. Very well. Follow the path and let the darkness consume you. As he opened the door, the smell hit them first, something metallic and damp, like rusted iron and decay. Mia's nose wrinkled, but she shrugged it off, pulling Tyler forward with her. The door slammed shut behind them, echoing through the entry hall. They stood in a small, dimly lit room. A red light cast shadows across the walls, and there were mannequin heads lining the shelves, each face frozen in an expression of terror. Suddenly, one of the heads turned, and Tyler jumped, his heart pounding. It's just animatronics, he muttered to himself, but he felt the hairs on his neck rise. They moved deeper into the house, passing through a narrow hallway lined with black drapes. The air grew colder, the smell of something rotten intensifying. They came to a heavy wooden door and pushed it open, stepping into a room that looked like a surgeon's chamber from a nightmare. Rusty surgical tools lay on a metal tray beside a long, blood-stained table. Dark, dried stains covered the walls, some looking suspiciously fresh. But what made Tyler's blood run cold was the figure lying on the table. A body so lifelike, with gaping wounds and exposed bone, eyes frozen open in an expression of sheer terror. Mia took a shaky step forward, reaching out as if to touch the body, before quickly pulling her hand back. It's So real, she whispered, her face pale. A voice suddenly crackled through hidden speakers. Do you think this is a game? Tyler and Mia froze, glancing at each other. The door slammed shut behind them with a heavy thud, and the lights dimmed further, casting the room in a sickly red glow. The voice cackled again, echoing off the walls. There's no exit here. Only fear, he said, mysteriously. They tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Tyler banged on it, calling for help, but there was only silence. Mia clutched his arm, her face tight with fear. Maybe it's part of the experience, she whispered, though her voice shook. But as they moved to the next door, the smell of blood became overpowering. They entered a dark room with walls lined with shelves of jars. Inside the jars floated severed fingers, eyes, and even a heart, each suspended in a murky liquid. A twisted face was smeared across one of the jars, a message scratched on the glass. Help me! Tyler tried to laugh it off. It's probably all fake, right? But the look on Mia's face told him she wasn't so sure. The door to the next room opened slowly, revealing a staircase leading down into pitch darkness. A low hum filled the air, and they could hear what sounded like faint whispers coming from below. Maybe we should go back, Mia whispered, gripping his hand tightly. But the door behind them was locked tight. There was no choice but to go down. They descended the stairs, each step creaking underfoot. The air was damp and thick, with a smell that was nauseatingly familiar. Blood. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a narrow corridor. The walls were covered with faded, bloody handprints, smears trailing downward as if victims had been dragged through here, clawing at the walls in desperation. They emerged into a chamber lined with what looked like masks on the walls, faces twisted in agony, horror, and despair. But as Tyler looked closer, he realized they weren't masks at all. They were faces, real, shrunken, and preserved, sewn to the walls like trophies. Mia gagged, her hands shaking as she backed away from the grisly sight. This can't be real, she said, scared. But Tyler knew. The smell of decay, the horrifying detail in each face, it was too much to be fake. They were in a house of horrors, not a haunted attraction. Suddenly, one of the faces opened its eyes, its mouth twisting as it let out a silent scream. Tyler stumbled back, pulling Mia with him, but the door to the next room beckoned, open just enough to let them through. They stumbled into the last room, their hearts pounding, every nerve on edge. The room was empty save for a single chair in the center. A figure sat there, bound and gagged, their eyes wide with terror, pleading for help. But as they approached, the figure began to convulse, shaking violently as though possessed. The lights flickered, and in that brief moment of darkness, Tyler felt cold hands grip his shoulders. When the light returned, he turned, but there was no one there. The door to the outside was just beyond. They sprinted towards it, throwing it open and bursting into the cold night air. They ran to their car, breathless and shaken, but when they looked back, Hollow Manor was gone, replaced only by the dark, silent woods. The voice from inside echoed in Tyler's mind as he turned the key in the ignition. Come back any time.